Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and you're watching a new episode of Wojennik TV. Some time ago I have showed you the content of one of the expansions for Deep Madness. This expansion is called the Uncounted Horrors and it includes all the elements unlocked during the Kickstarter campaign, which was launched in order to publish Deep Madness. Today I would like to present a review of this expansion. Deep Madness is a game published by Diemension Games and designed by Roger Ho. It is a cooperative sci-fi horror game in which 1 to 6 players will take control of investigators trying to achieve missions and survive in the underwater complex facility of Kadath. The expansion, as I said a few moments ago, contains all the elements unlocked during the Kickstarter campaign. So as you might expect, there will be a lot of miniatures, a lot of additional elements, and also one additional scenario. How those elements look like and what are my thoughts about the content of this box? Let's take a look. Here are all the elements which are inside of the box of the Uncounted Horrors. Well, let's now take a look at all of them. First of all, we receive one big tile which is used with the single additional scenario which is found in the booklet added to this expansion. Here it is, the Uncounted Horrors expansion. This booklet describes us what are the components, what are the additional rules, and it also comprises this additional scenario which is called Another Dawn, which is called also the true ending to the Deep Madness story. As you can see, a big board on which we will try to overcome the monsters and try to escape Kadath using some additional elements, and some of those elements are among those components which are inside this expansion. Now, this big tile, as I said, is used with this additional scenario. Apart from this tile, we receive some additional cards. First of all, we receive additional equipment which will be added to the deck of things, of different findings that we can run into while playing. And for instance, we receive a shotgun, we receive a revolver, a skater gun, we receive a sledgehammer, which is one of my favorite new cards. The self-destruct system, which is a very interesting card, which enables you to literally destroy tiles which are part of the system of the playing area. And alongside this card come those 6 three-dimensional elements. Those are the self-destruct devices which are put onto the corresponding tiles, and then they can cause an explosion which destroys all that was on such a tile. We receive some ice pickaxes, a KS squad, and one additional card which is the second chance. So very interesting additions. As I said earlier, why my favorite is definitely the sledgehammer. Look at that. It can deal 3 additional damage if we roll 1 or more 6s while using it. Among the cards, we receive 2 additional Madness cards which are added to the Madness deck. Some additional cards which are used with this scenario mentioned earlier. So the tile and the cards will be used with this scenario. The self-destruct device also, but they can be used in each other scenario because this card enables the use of those elements. Then we receive cards which are associated to the new monsters activation spawn cards, and activation cards which are associated to the new investigators. We receive 7 new investigators and several new monsters. Now let's take a look at some of those investigators and monsters. So we receive first of all Pris, who is of course a character known from the Blade Runner movie. So this is a very interesting character because Pris doesn't use sanity. She will be using other characters' abilities, and she can spend sanity from those characters. So she's connected in some way to other heroes. Then we receive Charles Ryan. Now look at this beast. He has 12 health points. Additionally, he can freely move through flooded spaces because he doesn't use oxygen to act on those spaces. He's a heavy miner, very useful, very resilient, but somewhat slow because, as you can see, his escape is only 3. Then we receive David, who is, I believe, my favorite character from this expansion. David is an android, and he can use some additional tokens which are connected, used with this investigator. He can receive those additional tokens if he has any wounds. So he doesn't use sanity as other characters, but if he gets those tokens, he can get rerolls, and if he, for instance, has 4 or 5 wounds, he can get 4 or 5 of those tokens in order to make a huge number of rerolls. Then we get Amanda Weaver, who is, of course, connected to Sigourney Weaver and to Ripley from the Alien franchise. A very interesting character also because alongside Ripley, Amanda Weaver, we will be using also a small cat which is called John. John will be attracting other monsters because he is considered as an investigator, is treated as an investigator during monsters' movement. We cannot use this miniature in order to explore, in order to move it freely, but we can attract in some way the other monsters towards this small cat. We get Stephen Cooper, who is an extremely interesting character because Cooper enables us to influence the activation track. He can, during the activation phase, he can exchange his activations card with another investigator's activation card. So very often while playing the game, we are wondering how to do some actions, in which order do those actions, and how to use the current order in which the different characters will be activated. Cooper can change this instantly, and we can use his ability to create a better order which will enable us to, for instance, escape a big monster or pick up a useful item, etc. Very useful, very interesting character. Dakota Johnson gets additional actions, so we can use additional tokens which can be used later in order to do additional actions out of turn. So she is also extremely useful and extremely powerful. Jacob Clark, finally, as you can see, is a relief expert. He attacks with 1 additional die, and this will be the monster's dice, which is something quite unique because no any other character had this capability. And additionally, if he rolls a corresponding symbol, he can kill a non-epic monster instantly, so he's very powerful in combat. Apart from those cards, apart from those miniatures, we receive also additional monsters, and look at this big one. This is the Mutilation, the biggest monster, the epic monster found in this expansion. Again, very interesting miniature, very detailed miniature with a lot of details, very thematic and very terrifying at the same time. We received 2 larger miniatures also, which are the Stuluish miniature and the Weird miniature. They aren't used during gameplay, they have no cards associated to them, so it's up to the players to find a way to use them. Maybe we can just paint them, add them to our collection, or maybe find them used during one of the scenarios. Why not make a card or even a scenario focused around those characters. We get those big beasts also. Look at them. They are extremely detailed, also full of details, and at the same time very terrifying. In this expansion we receive not only base monsters which will spawn normally, but some special monsters which will be spawned if some conditions are met. So let's take a look at the cards associated to those monsters. We get firstly one more Ravenous card, but this is the different Ravenous than from the basic game. As you can see, on those additional elements we receive a U letter which will then help us to differentiate the elements coming from the core game and from the expansion. And this Ravenous is a little bit different than the standard one because it enables us additionally to spawn a cannibal, a big monster. If two or more Ravenous enter activation in the same space, then we replace those Ravenous by a cannibal. So this is one of those special monsters which can appear on the board if some conditions are met. One of the basic monsters will be the Firster, but this will be a monster enabling us to place another special monster, the Glutton. So the Firster, as you can see, is quite nasty and quite ugly as well. This monster will be a monster which will gain additional life points and then spawn additional different monsters. The Cannibal, who will appear on the board thanks to the Ravenous, it will be activated before Ravenous, and look at that, you have to inflict him 6 wounds in order to kill him. He has additionally 1 point of endurance. Now the 1 point of resistance. The Glutton, so the big special monster, he is even more resilient because he has 3 points of resilience and 6 life points, so he will be quite difficult to destroy. Remains is a small monster, but look at the parameters. 3-4, it's very difficult to be killed. The Mutilation, which is the epic monster found in this expansion, very terrifying with interesting parameters. This monster will be associated to the Remains. Mutilation is a very big opponent. And those are the additional monsters. The additional elements which are inside of this expansion are also those tokens, which are, for instance, the +1 health token, the Android tokens, or the Dakota Jansen tokens. And one thing that is very useful, which in my opinion should instantly replace the element of the core game, are those 3-dimensional spawn markers. In the base game, remember, we got cardboard tokens. We were putting them on spaces where spawn markers were to be placed, but they were very similar to the Devour markers. Here we get the three-dimensional spawn markers, and they are very useful. At a glance, we can see very quickly where those places where those monsters will come from are located, and this is extremely good. This is an excellent upgrade. 2 additional markers, 2 additional small miniatures. The red one will be the activation marker, which can replace the token used in the base game, whereas the yellow will be the 3-dimensional Devour marker, which can replace the marker from the base game. So those are also very interesting additions. And that's it. when it comes to the content of this exclusive Kickstarter expansion. I would like now to pass to a conclusion and to give you my final thoughts about this expansion. What are my feelings about it? What are also my thoughts about playing the last scenario? Deep Madness is a fantastic game, and I am a huge fan of this setting, of the elements and of the story that this game tells. And when playing the basic game, I really had a lot of fun, and I found that the scenarios and the number of elements enclosed in the box were sufficient to provide countless hours of fantastic play. Thanks to the additional elements which I presented during this review and during the previous unboxing, and which are inside the box of the Uncounted Horrors, this endless number of hours becomes even more. Because now you receive a lot of additional elements which will further enhance your Deep Madness experience. I love the new investigators, I love the new monsters. You get such a great diversity thanks to them that while constructing your initial investigators pack, while choosing your monsters, you will each time receive a unique set of elements. I really like the idea that the investigators are all connected in some way to some sci-fi movies or some sci-fi worlds. Thanks to it, people who like science fiction, and to be frank, I believe that this game is for people who like science fiction settings, is something that really attracted those people and was a great idea to further increase the number of people interested in the game. So this is one of the reasons why this campaign ended in such a huge success, and why this game was such successfully funded. The additional levels, the additional stretch goals which were proposed during the campaign were such interesting that the players responded positively and further permitted to unlock those elements. Thanks to it, we got the Uncounted Horrors. So while taking a look at all those investigators, you have the feeling that each and every of them is very different from the others. And this is a great thing, because the game is not repetitive. The characters are absolutely different, both in terms of the miniature as also in the term of the style of play, of their weaknesses, of their strong points. No two characters are similar, and this is a very important factor, because I have seen a lot of games in which the characters which are granted to the players, which the players will take control of, are very similar. They are differentiated, for instance, by the possibility to influence a die roll, or by one different stat, which in the case of one investigator can be higher and lower in the case of another. Here, those additional capabilities are really the thing that differentiate those investigators. I love David, I love Pris. All of them are quite unique and quite interesting, and at the same time, playing them and choosing them, I have absolutely no feeling that an investigator is much more weaker than another. There are some investigators who seem to be very strong. For instance, Charles Ryan is really a powerhouse when you play in flooded spaces, but others are really well leveled, and I believe that this is also an important factor, because I have also seen some games in which you get really OP characters and weak characters, and when randomly choosing those characters, if you happen to take control of a weaker character, you might feel overwhelmed, you might feel the game boring. Here it will not be the case. At the same time, you receive a set of new monsters, and each of them very interesting. I like the idea of adding second level monsters which will spawn thanks to other monsters. It is a reason why playing with those monsters you have to more focus on those monsters than you did when while playing with the basic game. Because when you play the basic game using the basic elements, you will sometimes focus on the monsters in order, for instance, to kill a husk for stopping its spawning ability. But most often you will just try to accomplish your objectives, your mission objectives. You will try to pass by those monsters. You will try to escape them. Here, with those additional layers, with those monsters who will spawn depending on some situations, you will more frequently target those monsters in order to stop their evolution. And this is a nice thing because it changes in some way the way that you play Deep Madness. What I really liked is also the new scenario. It is very different from the others. Once again, it's a modular board. It's a scenario in which you will be racing against time, and you will be trying to acquire all the necessary elements before time runs out. At the same time, the playing area will become smaller each turn, and it will be very difficult to avoid a direct confrontation with the monster. So it is a confrontational scenario, and at the same time a race against the clock. So very difficult scenario, an unforgiving scenario in which you will really have to very carefully plan your actions, and there is absolutely no place for mistakes. I really like the 3D spawn markers. They are so functional. They responded to what I wanted to have in Deep Madness, because one of my major issues while playing with the elements from the core box were those spawn markers. They were so similar to over markers, to the devour markers, that I really had sometimes the difficulty locating them on the board. Now, thanks to those three-dimensional markers, it's both pretty and at the same time very functional. So, chapeau bas Dimension Games, this was a fantastic idea. What are the weaker points of Deep Madness Uncounted Horrors? Because always when reviewing an expansion, always when reviewing a game, I am both giving you my positive thoughts and some negative ones. But here, frankly speaking, I do not have any. The quality of the components is terrific. The diversity of the elements is great. The impact on gameplay and the enhanced replay value are just top notch. So what to say more? The only thing that I can say is grab this expansion if you can, add it to your Deep Madness core game and enjoy. It is just fantastic. This was the review of the Uncounted Horrors expansion for Deep Madness. Thank you a lot for watching this video. I hope you will revisit our YouTube channel another time. Take also a look at our Instagram and Facebook accounts. See you next time.